Quacks of Quedlinburg! It's probably the first example you'd come up with if I asked you to name a bag builder. With its incredibly tense rounds, dramatic explosions, and exciting reveals, it lends itself perfectly to any game night. However, a half dozen ingredients to throw into your pot combined with some interesting mechanics can make for a game that is tricky to introduce to new players. So, let's get quacking. As with every episode of How to Teach, I go ahead and make this little piece of paper. It's a teacher's guide. It contains all the information in the video step by step, so you don't have to memorize the whole thing. Just print it out or save it to your phone and you're good to go. So go ahead and eat your lunch or dinner while you watch, knowing you don't have to take notes. Quacks of Quedlinburg is one of my all-time favorites, despite the fact that I never win it. I'm way too greedy for a push-your-luck game. However, despite my losing streak that's identical to the number of times I've played it, Quacks is a phenomenal pick for any level of player, be it a gateway game for a new enthusiast or the first game of your regular game night. Your novelty-seeking friends are going to love how no two games are going to be the same with its different ingredient loadouts. Your competitive friends are going to love the crunch of calculating their odds of exploding next, and your party friends are going to love going for just one more chip every single time. Need a little speech that'll convince your friends and family to give it a try? Here's a 30-second pitch you can use to get it to the table. Do you have a case of the hiccups? How about irritable bowel syndrome? You might just be a little lovesick, honestly. Regardless of what ails you, the miracle doctors and quack surgeons of Quedlinburg have you covered. Each year, we quacks gather for a 9-day bazaar in the city walls to sell as potent of potions as possible. Mix together special ingredients to form that perfect elixir, but mix one too many ingredients and you might just explode. But think of the fame and glory you get if you brew it just right. Keep on mixing till the bazaar closes down because your next potion might be the best one yet. Okay. Let's address the few degrees I've heated up the planet by buying all this additional plastic. As is very common with the board game world, Quacks of Quedlinburg has a ton of fancy components you can buy, but if you've already got all the add-ons that you want, which given my demographic is more likely than not, you can just skip ahead to where I talk about the rest of the setup using the chapters below. I usually disagree with the statement that deluxe components inherently make a game better. However, when you quack this one open with all its fancy bits, you find that it does make a pretty tangible difference, at least when it comes to your teach. So in this case, we'll go through all the extra stuff that I recommend to bring to the table from most to least important, starting with these bad boys. These are the Geek Up circular bottom bags made specifically for quacking around. These are way nicer than the vanilla bags, which on its own is nice, but more importantly, they don't have the issue of pieces getting stuck in the corner of the bag. Honestly, it's really easy to have a game where your useful chips get stuck in the corner of the bag, and then you're just miserable the whole game, which for a first-time player can be incredibly frustrating. So if you're looking for the accessory that affects the game the most, this is, in my opinion, the one to get first and foremost. Second off, trays. These are 3D printed trays that I made myself. I'll do the best to find the files I used and put the link in the description below. There are also very similar storage containers you can buy as well if you don't have a 3D printer. However, I will admit, these are overkill, and if you've got any kind of tray lying around, anything will pretty much work. I personally like trays with dividers though, since it more clearly illustrates which ingredients have different levels of ingredient that you can buy, but honestly, just having any type of tray makes setup and cleanup way easier, and that alone is worth it. Rounding out our list as the most superfluous item that you can buy are the acrylic chips, also from Geek Up, and I gotta say, it pains me to put these so low on the list. I love these things. They are so nice, and they just feel so premium and wonderful and tactile, and how many more adjectives do you think I need to say before they sponsor me? Anyways, these are great, but totally unnecessary, especially if your game is new. Once you've been playing for a while, and we're talking like 30 plays of the game or more, the cardstock on the starting chips tends to wear down more than the others, so it can actually be pretty easy to tell which tokens are your white chips. And if you've played the game, you know that having that information literally at your fingertips is pretty busted. I actually wound up getting these right when I bought the game, so I just donated my original chips to my friendly local game store since their open play copy was very well loved. Love these things. Do not play with them once, because if you do, you will never want to go back. It is the forbidden fruit of board games. And it's not called Quacks of Paraphernalia, so let's get to the rest of the changes to setup. Being a game with lots of different options to choose from during setup means I get to have tons of fun looking through all the different options. And boy howdy, does Quacks of Quedlinburg deliver. Most ingredients have 4 different effects that can be in the game, and I've got opinions on their choice of starting set. For newer players, the starting setup they give is technically fine, but I actually recommend a different toadstool effect. See, the first set gives reds a bonus token based on pumpkins that are already in your pot, and that does lend itself really well to an obvious strategy. buy a bunch of pumpkins. However, that then leads to you also wanting to buy a bunch of red tokens since, well, you've got all these pumpkins now and none of the other chips do anything with them. I just think that particular red chip effect leads to a really boring strategy, and it's made even worse by the fact that pumpkins are so cheap. I'll say what we're all thinking. Honestly, the set 1 red chip effect just feels like an attempt to justify the pumpkins being in the game. Yeah, I said it. So I posit that you instead use the second sets effect. It's slightly more complicated, but I think it makes up for that. For starters, it lets players have a ton of flexibility on the space at the end on, which is much more strategic and forgiving than the first effect. Second off, it's cheaper, meaning that a player doing poorly is more likely to be able to afford it. And finally, it only comes into play once you've stopped drawing, which either will encourage new players to stop drawing earlier so they can use their toadstools, or if they do explode, gives them a little extra help to go to an important space. It also gives them a better sense of control since you get to keep it out of your bag for the next round if you decide not to use it. If you're looking for the loadout with the absolute lowest barrier to entry, with the simplest / least confusing chips to explain, in my opinion, they're all in set 1 except blue, red, and purples, which instead use set 3's effect. If the part of teaching games that scares you the most is explaining mechanics, this would be a good loadout for you to set up. Also, I'm gonna be honest, I think that the fortune teller cards are nothing but disruptive to your teach. They'll force you to explain things like weirdly out of order, and they'll give you stuff players haven't even been explained yet, and they'll just add an extra step to turns. I'm going to say hold off on these until your second game, but feel free to disagree with me and use them anyways. I'm not a cop, I'm a quack. Wrapping up the changes to setup, we're gonna do our favorite party trick, which is leaving stuff in the box to dramatically take out later. Go ahead and leave all the Ghost Breath and Mandrake related things in the box, along with the fortune teller cards, regardless if you plan on using them or not. Leave the extra tokens that you don't need right away, such as the rat tail tokens, 50-point tokens, the extra white chips, or cherry bombs as they're called in the rulebook. Did you know that they're called cherry bombs? Page 4. You would know that if you read the rulebook before watching the video, which you're supposed to do. How are you gonna teach the game if you don't know the rules yet? Do you think that you'll be able to understand how to play the whole game just from my explanations because learning how to teach the game constitutes me addressing most, if not all, of the rules? Yeah, now that I think about it, you could probably get by watching this, but you should at least still skim the rulebook first, at least once, before playing the game. Now, I think it's time we take a quack at teaching this game. As always, right at the start of the teach, it's time to set the big 3, set the stage, set the goal, and set the expectations. This is a lovely little fantasy-themed game, and as such, some classical fantasy music is appropriate here. I don't think I've made it clear before, but if you can help it, never play a board game without music. It just absolutely elevates the experience tenfold easily. Once you've got your tasty tunes, it's time to set the stage. The 30-second pitch I gave at the start will mostly have you covered. It's honestly just an abridged version of the very good story section on the first page of the rulebook. All you need to do afterwards is point out all the little magic ingredients you get to play with. Be sure to use the actual names of all the ingredients instead of referring to them just by their color. It adds a lot of flavor to the game and will surely appeal to the alchemist in your life. Quedlinburg is just like everywhere else in the world. You win by having the most points. The very first thing you need to establish, though, is that players need to get some chips out of the bag and not explode. Honestly, that's just good life advice regardless of the situation. The most important part of setting the goal is making sure that everyone knows that by not exploding, you both win points and get to purchase new ingredients for better future rounds. Remember, setting the goal is not necessarily about how to win, it's instead about giving players their first immediately actionable task and general guide to gameplay. In this case, don't explode. Here's a little example of what I mean. So, in this game, we're going to be brewing concoctions that swirl around our pots, spiraling out and earning us lots of delicious points and money. The farther out you spiral, the more points you get, and the more you'll have to spend in the market to buy new ingredients. However, there's a catch. We're not very good at our jobs. We use a lot of filler ingredients, and that, unfortunately, includes cherry bombs. We all start with a bunch of these in our bag, and too many of them in your pot will explode, which will force you to pick between getting points or getting paid, not both. So don't do that. Now that you've set the goal, you'll want to emphasize that exploding is not the end of the world and will likely happen. This is a game that really emphasizes both the verb and the noun of push your luck. It's super easy to basically make yourself lose just from being overzealous with your chip drawing. And it's also possible to just flat out get unlucky. I call drawing all your white chips at the very start of the final round the Quacks of Quedlinburg experience. As such, I would give not a warning, but just a solid heads up that this game has many, many rolls of the theoretical and literal dice that you very rarely have full control over, so maybe play things a little safe, and don't take it too seriously if things go poorly. It's part of the fun. If you wanted a perfectly balanced game, you should have played Jenga, because it's We're moving on. Before we dive into the teach, let's talk about practice rounds. Most games can benefit from some kind of a practice round. They let you explore the game's mechanics risk-free, let you do a little learning on the job, so to speak, but I tend to dislike full practice rounds since they tend to take up a lot of time and they're almost always awkward to end early. Even worse, it can make players who get it impatient and bored, and in the case where someone actually does really, really well in the practice round, they can get a bit upset when you roll it back to start the whole game over. And honestly, some people just don't like practice rounds. They just want to get in there. However, in the case of Quacks, we can get the best of both worlds by having a Quacktice round. In the first round, after explaining basic gameplay, you don't necessarily need to draw attention to it as a practice round. You can instead just say that there's a contingency in the first round. You can start over one time if you got all exploded. Here's the example first round spiel that covers all of that. So, we're each going to draw these ingredients chips out of our bags one at a time. We can all do it at the same time, until one of two things happens to each of us. We think that our potion is perfect just the way it is, and we decide to stop drawing new chips, or you explode. There are only the two outcomes when it comes to making potions: quit or explode, just like real life. Like I said earlier, our goal is to get as far along the spiral as possible. As you draw chips, the number on it says how many spaces ahead to place it in your pot. So for example, 1 chips go on the next open space, 2 chips go 2 spaces ahead, leaving a gap, and so on. Go ahead and take a look at all your chips before we start. The orange chips are pumpkins, they don't do anything. The green chips are garden spiders, and we're looking to have these be one of the last 2 chips that we place. And the white chips, the ones you have a ton of, are your cherry bombs. If at any point you put a white chip into your pot, where the total face value adds up to more than 7, so 8 or more, you explode and that immediately ends the round for you, and there are consequences. If you happen to explode the first round, you can have one do-over at once. After that, it's up to you when to know to call it quits. Once everyone is done drawing chips for one reason or another, I'll walk us through the first evaluation phase to see how everyone did. At this point, go ahead and invite everyone to start drawing chips. You can have everyone do theirs one at a time if they need the oversight early on. Once you get to the evaluation phase, you can go ahead and walk everyone through the steps as seen on the score track. You'll just go through these one at a time. They're all pretty straightforward, at least in this round. I do have a few notes on some of the steps though, so let's go through those. For the chip actions, it's the second step. All you'll do for now is just evaluate the garden spider's effects, and that's all you'll talk about. And then once you get to buying chips later, that's when you'll explain the effect of the African Death Head's hawk moth chip. Or the black chip. I see why they normally call these by their color now. Anyways, you'll explain the other effects when you get to this step as well. Also, since you can only buy 1 or 2 ingredients each round, it's easy to forget that if you buy 2 chips, they can't be the same color. An easy way to remember this is 1 chip, 2 chip, red chip, blue chip. I'm really proud of myself on that one. When you get to the last step of the evaluation phase, that's when you'll explain what the rubies do. And you'll bust out everyone's flasks and explain that you can use these to put the last white chip in your pot back into their bag. And that 2 rubies will let you fill it back up. Make sure they know it doesn't work if the white chip you just drew made you explode. I need a term for rules in board games that no matter how much you emphasize it, someone will forget and they will later on be really salty about it. If you have ideas, leave it in the comments. I'm thinking something like a sodium stipulation. It's time for Rat's Tails, everyone's favorite catch-up mechanic. Every rat tail between you and the lead player on the score track gives you a bonus space on your pot. Depending on how round 1 went, there actually might not be anyone far enough behind to warrant these, but if someone is, then you can go ahead and explain how the Rat's Tail mechanic works. Otherwise, just save it for a later round whenever someone gets the benefit, probably the next round if I had to guess. Now that players have likely purchased a new chip, you'll want to be keeping a close eye out for when people draw their new fancy chips. Even if players got a good idea of how the rules work, they will likely ask for confirmation on how a particular chip works, at least the first time they draw it, so just be ready to explain everything more than once. During the evaluation phase in round 2, don't forget that you'll likely have to explain the black chip's effect again, as this is technically the first round where it can actually do anything. Mandrakes also get introduced during this evaluation phase, and just like the other chip effects, they're pretty easy to explain, especially now that everyone has the rest of the context of the game, so you can just get those out of the box and give a quick little rundown when it's time to shop. So, this is just a personal thing, but I have the worst memory ever, and the rules in the game say that you're never supposed to look in your bag, and I think that's stupid, because it's not like there's unseen things in there. You know what went in there. As the rounds go on, you can have like 20 or more chips in your bag. I think it's supposed to help add to the tension of the explosions, and to that end it succeeds, but it's not like you can't just count the white chips in your pot and figure out which ones are in your bag, and then you could just count the total number in your bag by feel. So it's like, what's the harm of looking in there if the critical information is already available? What I'm saying is, if someone wants to see what chips they have, at the very least between rounds while shopping, I would just let them do it, especially if it's their first game and they're still getting the mental image of what chips are likely to be in their bag at any given time. I don't think this is supposed to be a memory game, but I'm gonna leave that ruling up to you. By the time you hit round 3, people should start getting the hang of things, placing chips, scoring points, and having a great time. Seriously, I love this game, and I have viewers like you to thank for letting me cover it. Big thanks to all my Patreon supporters for voting on this game to be covered. Oh, there's just the one? Oh, there's just the one. All right, well, gotta start somewhere. During round 3's evaluation phase, you get to bust out the Ghost Breath or the purple chips. And that's pretty much the last new thing until round 6, where at the start of it, you get to add one more cherry bomb to everyone's bag. Rinse and repeat until you get to the final round. During this last round, you'll need to explain how this ultimate showdown goes. Everyone will no longer be drawing out their own whimsy. No, we all draw together. The way I run this is by saying we all grab one from our bags and then hold our hands out. Then on the count of 3, 2, 1, stir, you open your hand to reveal the ingredient you're going to add to your pot next. However, when you want to stop, you don't say anything, you just draw nothing, but you still hold your hand out for the grand reveal that you're quack-a-lackin'. An empty hand means you're out for the round. After that, tally up the points and congratulate yourself for giving the best gosh darn cheats of Quacks of Quedlinburg of your entire life, probably. Now that everyone's got the basics down, this will easily enter your game night rotation and you'll be on your way to buying too many board game accessories. They grow up so fast. Oh hey, what's this? Why, it's the teacher's guide from the intro. You don't have to memorize the whole thing, I've written it all down for you. It's available for free on my Patreon. To anyone, go ahead and give it a look-see and maybe consider chucking me a few bucks a month to help me out. I've got at least 2 supporters, which can vouch for me now. And like you might have heard me mention earlier, Patreon supporters get to vote on what games get covered on the show next. So if you've got a game that you struggle to get to the table, Patreon is your best bet to get an episode of How to Teach made for it. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, release the Quackin'! That's the last one, I promise. So, funny story, I actually used to think that I was really bad at this game, or just like incredibly unlucky, and after losing 7 games in a row, it turned out that the blue bag somehow got an extra white chip in it, and since I just leave the starting chips in the bag between games, and I always play blue, yeah. It'd be even worse if I was the one that set it up every time. That'd be even worse. Quacks of Quedlinburg! I don't know why I'm doing jazz hands.